Hey everyone, we're gonna do more Disventure Camp hot takes. The first video did surprisingly well, so I figured it's only right to do part 2 with the remaining hot takes. Again, I will not be putting these on a tier list, there's no graphic, but what I will be doing is that I will be ranking them based on how hot the take is, how spicy it is, not, how good the quality is, but how spicy it is. So, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna start off with a very controversial one. Logan is the best, OMG says. This isn't my hot take, but total drama Ethan's instead. Lake is the worst Disventure Camp character ever, her whole personality is her arc, and she's basically Maggie 2.0. So, I would be inclined to agree with this, for the most part in the beta. I actually made a very long Twitter thread, I think 2 years ago today, 2.5 years ago, where I talked about how Lake is a very weirdly written character, because she doesn't really have, for the most part, she doesn't have flaws. I think there's a scene where her and Rosa have a minor disagreement, and that's about it. And obviously, her character is that nice girl archetype. I do know that this was criticized a lot back in 2022, but I think it has since evened out, where a lot of people back in the day thought Lake was one of the best characters. And I think in terms of DC too, she's one character who, while she doesn't have a very high ceiling, she also, her ceiling is higher than everyone else, and her floor is nowhere near as low as everyone else. Hunter, of course, being the big example, but even, Maggie and Aiden, James, Rosa, Rhea, in the beta, right? The beta DC2. But I think nowadays Lake is a character that is kind of stands out for being someone who has her flaws shown better. Her friendship with Aiden, her dynamics with Maggie and Rosa. Even the Rhea plot is a lot more defined and structured, nuanced, because I feel like at the time, a lot of people, if you asked what caused Rhea's hardships, it's that she's jealous over Lake with Rosa, because Rosa found the idol and she told Lake, but not Rhea. Despite Rhea literally being right there, she feels inadequate and insecure, and I feel like that subtext is there in the beta, but it's not as defined as you think it should be. But for the most part, I do think that Lake is an interesting character because she is, the nice girl, and I think that's something that's common in Total Drama seasons and Total Drama fan projects, and I think it stands out in Disventure Camp because a lot of characters are more melodramatic and have more struggles and just feel more alive. Even this, no offense to the voice actor, but even in the remake, season 5, where the whole "you are a monster" speech, I don't know, it didn't feel as strong as it could have been, because Lake, for the most part, feels like an OC kind of character who is here to be, great. Not perfect. She does have flaws, but compared to everyone else, she seems more like an angel. And I don't know. It stands out in this kind of show where we are so often told about the flaws. Maybe DC5 will correct that. I remember when I was pitching a future Lake appearance after All Stars, I was like, let's give Lake a more defined flaw. And so, some people, some of their proofreaders were like, that might be a little too derailing. But at the same time, it's like that makes her more appealing, I feel, because she's so perfect. If you can hear the dog in the background, I'm sorry, there's a very loud dog right now. I don't know what's happening. It keeps on yapping, literally yapping, like a dog should be. Anyway, thank you. Logan is the best OMG. The next person is Happy Gem. Happy Gem says, I don't believe Logan did anything wrong. He simply played the game. Even if that meant backstabbing his allies, at least he didn't nearly kill someone. So I don't think people, I'm talking about the fans, are annoyed that Logan did anything wrong, because in universe, no one's really mad at him. He is playing the game. He is flipping on people, which is the benefit of the game. You're playing a Survivor-esque game where you need to vote people out and backstab your allies and try to strategize so that you're in the end with the people you want to be with. The thing is, I feel like the show's narrative makes it so that Logan, and to an extent Hannah as well, and Zayd a little bit, get really annoyed that people are playing the game. And that can be annoying, especially when you have several seasons worth of build-up of people being more okay with game moves, right? So when the narrative explicitly is like, oh man, I'm flipping a lot, or whatever, and Logan just feels so awful about it, it's like, why are we focusing on this? Why is this the thing that stands out? And the show never explicitly calls him out, even though he does feel bad, and people call him a flipper and people get annoyed at him. It never has lasting consequences. It never really feel like it ties together, and it just feels so woe is me and somber, right? Especially when you have other characters like Hannah and Anastasia who have more real world context. And Hannah more so than Anastasia. Anastasia, it's there. I feel like it's not as well put together, but or definitive, but maybe DC5 will fix that. Whereas Logan's is more, he's in the Olympics. That's already a great thing. And it feels like he's kind of victimizing himself in a position where other people are doing not so well. Now, I'm someone who I don't think you should compare your traumas. I was someone who was an advocate for Allie and Gret. I didn't want Gret to be like, oh, my problems are way worse than yours, Allie, because Allie's still valid, right? But Logan's just feels so much more privileged, I guess, because he's in the Olympics still. Like, third place is not bad. He's the third in the world at age 20. That's ridiculous. The golden child thing, which also is unfortunate because this is like, I feel like a lot of media focuses more on the younger sibling being victimized, feeling inadequate to their older siblings. So this is interesting, especially me as an older sibling. I do think that this is something that is not put in media nearly as much, but I don't feel like it was put well together that much. And of course, him winning just validates this sort of toxic mindset where it's like he always needs to be perfect, he always needs to be the best. He doesn't learn something of like humility where it's like it's okay to be third, it's okay to be second. I think Natalia slaps him a bit, and there's a bit of conversation there, but him ultimately winning just feels weird. Anyway, to go back to what you said, I don't think he did anything wrong in terms of like being a bad person, but I don't like how the game, the show really tries to make him seem like a victim or feel bad for him when it's like dude, he's just playing the game and no one's gonna call him out anyway. It's just weird drama and stuff that I feel like doesn't tie together nearly as well, right? Especially in a show where it's like, this season a lot of people are kind of soft and weenies in terms of playing the game, and it's just like, I don't know. I thought the drama is less character based and more game based, and it's not nearly as compelling because it's like, I want to see why these characters, fight, what personality clashes they have, not necessarily like, oh, I just flipped on my friend or anything like that. And on top of that, and this is like the quiet part out loud that I think a lot of people don't comment on, but this is the most diverse season. And when you have this character who doesn't have as big of flaws that are so personal and come from adversity, like Zayd or Hannah or Jade, right, or Anastasia even, and it's the white boy protagonist, it's like that can be a little eye-rolling. And I'm not saying you can never make like a white boy sympathetic or go through adversity, but like, it's a little heartbreaking that, and annoying that Logan is the one that gets the main focus, you know what I mean? And like, I think that DC4 does have that, a massive problem, where the minority characters, the people of color characters, are the ones that get less focus. And, DC as a whole is like that. The first 3 seasons, but you can make the justification that like, oh, DC2, they were submitted characters, the DC1 characters were created in 2010, but I don't know, this one is like, they should have known better at this point, so yeah, as someone who is a person of color, it is, a little disheartening and disorienting. Anyway, thank you for that comment, Happy Jam. I didn't even rank the last 2, I don't know, should I rank them? I don't know. The Lake take, S tier, the Logan take, I would say that's A tier, I would say that's a pretty good hot take. It's not the spiciest, but that's pretty good. Okay, Sylvixa says, I think the hate towards Fiore from DC1 and DC All-Stars to an extent cast is so overdone. So, Corey Horlatcher 3460 says, it's been 2 years in universe from season 1 to All-Stars. You'd think the cast should just move on. And then Sylvixia responds with, I know, some of the Fiore jokes felt more like joke because she's a bad person, that she deserves it, rather than joke because it's a child, which really throws me off. So I think the thing is, that this is more from a writing perspective that at the time when DC All-Stars was being written, which was season 1, episode 6, so that was, I think, August 2023, a lot of fans were really into Nick and Ashley and Lil. And you might say, okay, well, a small minority like that, and you're using that to justify why Fiore hate was written that well, but like that small minority was very vocal about loving, Ashley's alliance and really disliking Fiore. So that's why those jokes were in there to be like, hey guys, look, Fiore's finally getting her just desserts. Now, did we expect that Fiore would become extremely beloved? I mean, yeah, she's a fun villain. But did we also expect that those Ashley fans would soon dissipate and not show up anymore? To the point where people were calling Ashley overrated in All-Stars and like she's just kind of a mentor figure? No, that was the biggest like writer expectation versus audience expectations for me. I'm not a writer, of course, but proofreader, but we were discussing like, man, we really thought Ashley would be super beloved and like she's a great character, but a lot of people did not like it. And the same thing can be said for Logan in DC4, even though I didn't really do anything for DC4. And I just thought that was interesting. I do think that, yeah, some of the hate is a little overdone because this is a kid at the end of the day, and it is kind of funny because Ashley in episode 1, she actually forgives Ellie for being even nastier, and Ellie's an adult. Fiore's a child who doesn't know better. Yeah, she's comically evil, and she burnt their things, and, manipulated the competition, and that can sting, especially on, live television, or not live television, but, recorded television. But at the same time, it's like, are you still that, petty over 2 years? And yeah, people can hold grudges and be vengeful, especially even adults. Even someone who is 21, like 21, maybe to the viewers, maybe to y'all, 21 is like so old, but to me, 21 is like, she's still a kid, But when you have this character, Ashley, who is kind of supposed to be this mentor figure to Jake, who is, I think, 27 or 28, it does come across as weird that she is a little hypocritical in her anger towards a child, right? It does come across as weird that, like, Jake literally calls her, "How are you so stable, Ashley? How are you so, like, cool and you get it all done?" And yet here she is beefing with a child. And that's why she got the nickname Trashly for a little bit. If you guys remember that, in early 2024, the nickname Trashly was super common. But I get that. Yeah, no, I agree with you that the hate towards Fiore is a little overdone. It doesn't even lead anywhere other than the, where she gets eliminated, which feels a little underwhelming, to be honest. I think a lot of people are underwhelmed by it. I think that was supposed to be a big moment of catharsis for those fans in mid-2023 who did not like Fiore and really liked Ashley. But yeah, a lot of those fans, by the time that episode rolled around in All-Stars, those fans were gone. Those fans were long gone. We have to remember that a lot of the fans don't make the jump from one season to another. Like, a lot of the fans of DC2 did not watch DC1, a lot of the fans of DC1 did not watch All-Stars, and a lot of the fans of All-Stars did not watch DC4, and I'm expecting that a lot of the DC4 fans won't watch DC5. So, I mean, it's just, it's stuff that, like, we have to just be more wary. I say we as if I'm still working on with OddNationCartoons, I'm not. But we just have to be more wary of how we write things specifically for certain demographics of fans. Anyway, next up is a comment from Imaruru. Number 1 is, of course, I'm here glazing DC All-Stars. It's my favorite season. I do agree. Maybe having it be branded differently would have been beneficial, but I think the cast is mostly fine as it was, and I could have really only seen Logan and Miriam being changed out. Despite its flaws, I think it's the best season, and I love the final 30 bits and pieces. I would love to comment on that, but I've already made several tier list videos talking about why I like All-Stars, and of course, I help proofread All-Stars, so I'm very biased, but yeah. Do I think it could have been branded differently? I disagree, just because it would have gotten less views. If you call it something like Disventure Camp Second Chances, or Disventure Camp, Returnee Season, it's like, that's not nearly as, bombastic or good for the algorithm, right? I think All-Stars is the most viewed season, not just because it's a big celebration, but because of the title. Like, when you see All-Stars, you know what that means. To a casual outsider fan, it's like, oh man, they have an All-Star season. We're building up to an All-Star season, and retrospectively, you want to watch the first 2 seasons now. Maybe not the beta, because that really didn't get that many views. That's why the remake had to be made, because people just were not watching DC2 beta. But yeah, it's weird to call it DC2 beta, by the way. It's really weird. As someone who was there from the very start. Anyway, the second point is, I don't like how Hunt Alley is being handled in the DC2 remake. This could be outdated, because obviously I haven't seen all the DC2 remake, and they're certainly better handled than in original DC2, but I feel like the connection they have is largely underdeveloped romantically, which is a shame because they're one of my favorite ships in the series, and they were really sweet in DC All-Stars. Now that their origin is kind of mid, it makes their fights in DC All-Stars a lot weaker emotionally. So I think that's interesting, because I don't think that the Hunt Alley couple have a whole lot of conflict in the remake. They also don't have a whole lot of conflict in the beta, but there is a little bit of beef. Hunter's like, do you make all kids cry? And of course, there's that uncomfortable kiss scene in episode 9 in the beta that doesn't really even go anywhere. But I think that just shows that there is some rifts, They may not be perfect for each other in the moment, and they still have a lot to work on. I think the remake sort of makes them a little too perfect, and I feel like it doesn't replace some of the more, or doesn't replace or even add more wholesome content that you would expect. I'm imagining, of course, and this is me relating it to Total Drama, but in Total Drama, the Big Sleep episode, you have some nice scenes with Trent and Gwen getting along, understanding why they know each other, and I'm specifically saying this because, it's in the Awake-a-thon challenge, which is, like, kind of also in DC2. I feel like it largely goes without scenes where Hunter and Allie just kind of bond as people. I'm not saying there's none, because there are stuff like that, but, I don't know, they're here to help out Tess, and Hunter is here to flesh himself out, and Allie is here to talk about her haters and all that stuff. But for the most part, I feel that I don't know. It's here to be a segue to All Stars, less than something that is more standalone. I feel like if we didn't know the context of All Stars or the context of a future season, I would probably look at Hunter and Allie and be like, they're good characters, but they're kind of undercooked. And I feel like that's the big shame. That's what I was a little worried about. Is that I was really hoping that the DC2 remake could help contextualize All Stars a lot better, and to an extent it does, but I feel like it doesn't do it nearly enough. Some of the episodes are a little shorter than you'd expect. They're only about 16, 17 minutes long, when you could make them, 20 or 22 minutes long and add additional scenes, right? I think one of my hot takes is that I think All Stars could have benefited if some of the episodes were just slightly longer. If the episodes were 5 minutes longer, or even, adding a few episodes here and there to better justify things and make it feel less brisk. Cut out the host plot, for example, or feel more brisk rather. Would have helped it out. I don't think you could change some of All Stars. You just add more. Yeah. So yeah, that's my hot take on that matter. That's my take on the matter. And Maruru says, Dan should come back. Dog, for real, what would Bro do? This applies to a lot of pretty much characters who are just meant to be fodder. Dog, what would Drew even do? Let's think about this for a second. The only reason Dan could ever come back is that Jenny gets to voice him. Shout out to Genesis Greenwood. Yeah, shout out to Genesis Greenwood. I don't know. Like Dan is a character. I already talked about this in the previous video, but Dan is, he has the bare minimum strategy, and I think people like that at the time when the characters weren't really doing that in DC2 beta, but obviously since then that has changed a lot. And I think it's nice to have a blank slate character who is kind of there, and maybe you could, I don't know, because like as someone who is mostly asexual, for a good amount of my life, you could maybe explore that, but the thing about exploring that is that you're exploring that by not exploring it, and he seems to already know what he is, so I don't know. Does that make sense? Like, because you're not attracted to anyone. It's like, okay, it's hard to write a story where you discover that you're not attracted, whatever. I hope any asexuals in the audience don't get mad at me for my confused ramblings, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think for a pre-merge season, it could be fun to have him back and like have like an arc, give him an arc that isn't necessarily about his asexuality, but it's up to the writers to see what they do. Let's see what they cook up with. I'm kind of hoping that Lake gets something like that in DC5, where she gets an arc that is unique. Because All Stars, and even Tom Jake, we really didn't know what to do with her. We really, really did not know what to do with her. Anyway, the next one is, I understand why people heavily like Jake and Allie's constant bickering in DC All Stars, so I think it's genuinely an interesting dynamic. Both are people with low self-confidence due to their parental abuse. Allie's mom never really believed in her dream, and Jake knew that he would never be loved by his parents since he was gay, and largely found a safe space in their deceased grandparents. It's because of their similarities to each other, they end up fighting 24/7, they see the worst parts of themselves in each other, and both of them hate that because they hate themselves. It is sad because when we see them slow down and talk in episode 20, they're cute friendship. Same with episode 6, it's really nice that after Hunter's elimination, Jake and Allie get to bond over the music stuff. And it really is what that scene was meant to imply, where it's like they're talking about, oh, we're just two lovesick romantics. It's like, hey, look, if Fiore didn't meddle with them, they probably could have been really good friends for most of All Stars if the stress of the game and realizing, Jake and kind of Allie spiraling into the worst versions of themselves with their insecurities, they could have probably been really great friends, and luckily it turns around in episode 20 and 21 in the finale of the season, right? And I think one of the worst takes I've seen is like Fiore, is that like Jake and Allie, their rivalry started because of apples in episode 7 or episode 8, and I'm like, that is one of the worst takes I've seen. It is because of the Fiore stuff, it is because of their insecurities. And I really like it, they're very sibling coded, and it's very sweet. I've seen so much fan art of like Ashley kind of being like the mom figure, trying to like get her 2 kids to stop fighting, and like they're trying to fight for mom's attention. I don't know, it's so funny. As someone who does have siblings, right? It is so real, and I don't know, I really like how it was a big risk to make Allie, who is the most like boring character, most like divisive, second most divisive to Rhea in the beta, make it this far and have Jake be the catalyst for that. Like, it's Jake was also a very divisive character when DC1 came out, so to see both of them make it to the final 3 with Rhea, who's also another divisive character, it's just a big risk, but in my opinion it paid off. It's a very strong thesis statement about what it means to be in reality TV, and I don't know, it's just very interesting how that subtext where it's like they specifically are such similar characters and yet they can't get along. They are like mirror images of themselves. It's so powerful. Like, we've seen rivalries with Jake versus Ellie, Jake versus even Tom, Jake versus Rhea, Jake versus Aiden. But Jake versus Allie is like, if you think about it, it's really Jake versus Jake. Well, female Jake. And it's like, wow, it's like now he has to fight himself. And that's the big storyline that he has to overcome. And one of the big storylines he has to overcome. And I think it's so great. Miriam is so overrated as a winner, her arc stops at episode 5, and she just supports Jake till she ends up winning. Now, her game is impressive considering she had 0 votes to her name, and she's a solid character, but as a winner, I need someone who's more important to the season as a whole. Miriam just isn't that. James and Rhea are absolute hearts of their seasons, who are overall relevant throughout the whole thing. No comment on Logan, which is kind of funny. I'm talking about their runs in the winning games, by the way, because Rhea is in DC2 has major screen time issues. Miriam isn't that, and it hurts her arc as a winner. I think that the voice under the covers friends, the friendos, will probably agree with that. And I do think that Miriam, there was a lot of hype for her at the time, the Miriam miracle, but there was also a lot of criticism. I do think that the early episodes of All Stars, right? Because remember, the gap between the DC1 finale, which was in December, and Miriam's own elimination in All Stars, which was, I think, February, was a very short gap. So for a few months, you had a lot of people criticize Miriam. But then when she exposed the Villains Alliance and she acts cool and stuff, it's a cathartic moment for a lot of fans, and a lot of people probably like her. She's the most, like, safe winner, I'd say. Like, James, Rhea, and even Logan are characters that are more divisive, right, more divisive, they do more controversial things, there's more criticism towards the writing. Miriam is just kind of safe, and that's probably why people latch onto her. That's probably why people latch onto DC1, because despite everything with, you know, the cave scene, very controversial cave scene, it is probably the most safe season. And, you know, I don't mind Miriam's winning, because it's less about why Miriam won, and more why Fiore and Ellie lost, if that makes sense, and Alec as well. And I kind of like that. Of course, there's the whole, you know, she kind of avenges Jake and Tom's eliminations, which is cool, but for the most part, she is more of a, what would happen if a more supporting character won. I think that she has more depth than the other supporting characters, of course, because she, well, maybe not Rosa now, because they're doing a lot of unique stuff with Rosa, and hopefully that extends to DC5. But, you know, her, her husband, wow, horrible voice crack there. Her husband, don't clip that. Her husband and son passed away in a car accident, and, you know, you know, and she does start off the season as someone who is more bitter and salty about everything, and, you know, throughout the season she overcomes it. Of course, it pretty much happens early on in episode 5, so the audience isn't, you know, challenged too much like Jake and Allie. Like, they fight for, what, like 13, 14 episodes? Miriam, that's only 5-ish episodes, and she overcomes it, and she ends up, you know, staying till the end, which is crazy. But yeah, I mean, I like the character of Miriam, but I agree with, I think a lot of modern perspectives now look back and they're like, Miriam is kind of overrated as a character. He's very safe, you know, kind of character, and that's fine. But, you know, I agree. I think that out of the first three seasons, she's the winner. That I'm like, yeah, she's the one that's the least, like, interesting to me. She's better than Logan, but yeah. Okay. We'll do a few more. Voice under the cover. Speaking of voice under the covers, voice under the cover says Gabelli is boring. Ellie has become Gabby's girlfriend and nothing more, and it really makes her character lame. So, trying to think. I do think that there's been an uprising of Gabby content, which is surprising because when DC1 came out in 2023, people really did not like her. They found her suffocating. They found her arc about, you know, her storyline about, you know, the animal rights and all that stuff very annoying, and they found her a little too random. And I think even the voice under the covers in their reaction, they also weren't the biggest fans of Gabby at first. But obviously, All Stars sort of changed that. Ellie got eliminated, and Gabby had to have a little revenge storyline. You know, avenging Ellie against Tom, Tess, and Aiden. We had the Gret moments against Yule and all that stuff. You know, even in episode 14, she went up against her alters. You know, so very interesting stuff there. But I do think that there has been an increase of Gabbification, and I assume the voice under the covers is talking more so about Tom, Jake, season 1 and 2, and especially DC5, where it's like we're getting a lot more Gabby focus when Ellie is the one that is the more interesting one. And I know I said earlier in this video that DC4 has a problem with focusing on the white person or the Caucasian person in the relationship rather than the person of color. You know, but at the same time, I'm like, Gabby is a character who, for the most part, is there to be fun. But I don't know. I think Ellie is more interesting. I don't know. I really like Ellie as a character, and I really like Gabby as a character. But I do think that when they're separated temporarily, right, they're a lot more functioning, right? They're a lot more unique in that regard. And I don't know, if Gabby is only here to just be a quip machine, not quip machine, like a silly quote machine, and also the Tom friendship, which also they are really, you know, I like the Tom and Gabby friendship when it's natural, but I think at a certain point, I think when Tom named his cat Gabs, I'm like, oh, okay, this is it's like, look how cute friendship we are. It's very like show-offy and performative from a writing perspective, and it does annoy me a little bit. But yeah, and of course, I think that their conflict was good in All Stars. I really did like the conflict where it's like, does Ellie really love Gabby, or does she want the money more? And the answer is no. Of course, Ellie wants the money. Sorry, Ellie loves Gabby more than the money. She would throw that all away just to be with her. But at the same token, it's like, you know, and for the most part, that's the end of their conflict. They had they had a season worth of that, and now they're good. But I do think that the outrage that people had, has affected the sapphic couples on the show, Anastasia and Marissa, for example, because the sapphic couples get less attention than the gay couples, right? The female couples get less attention than the male couples. Now they have to play it really safe because there was a lot of negative attention given to Gabelli in All Stars, and because of that, the Marissa and Anastasia, there's basically no real like definitive, long-lasting consequences for it, and it's more so here to be positive and happy, and that's boring in a reality show. Like, maybe some people like that, but I don't know. As someone who watches the show for the drama and all that stuff, it's like, ugh. But yeah, I don't know. Gabelli, I don't know. It's a little too safe. It's a little too safe, and I hope that they can function both as characters separate from each other, while still being a couple. They don't have to break up or anything like that, but just give them more time to be individual characters. And and Gabby, stay away from Tom for a little bit, just a little bit. He's not a bad influence or anything. It's just like, just stay away. And we'll do one more take for this video, and then we'll do the remaining ones for a future video for part 3. But Warter Hat 6232 says the show needs to be less melodramatic. Stop making romance the main thing in the show. The POC people of color have usually been handled horribly in the show. Cough cough, Marissa and Diego. So, my take on this is that, like, this is a reality show, the reality TV genre. The creators specifically, they grew up with Survivor and Big Brother, and like the melodrama is just something that you just kind of have to accept in the genre. Like, that's kind of what the genre is. You go in Big Brother, they are fighting over nothing 90% of the time. Honestly, even adults, like fully functioning adults, fight over pretty much nothing, like 24/7. Stuff that could be handled with a quick conversation or two. People are like that. People are petty. People are not mentally aware. And if you are signing up for a reality show, if you are this like chronically television based, then you're probably not the most stable person, right? Let's be honest. And I think it's jarring if you came up with whole drama or object shows, and it's like, those shows, they have conflict, but it's more so friendlier and everyone gets along for the most part. Like, you have some characters that, in object shows especially, they're like, you're ugly, you are so ugly. And it's like, that's the big drama. But like, I don't know, I like how the show focuses on the human condition for the most part, right? And you could make the counter argument where it's like, well, it's not good that you have to have context of a completely outside show, Survivor and or Big Brother, to get more with the amount of fighting and melodrama in Disventure Camp. But at the same time, that is the staples of the genre, right? Like, watch any like live action reality show, people just fight for the sake of fighting. Pressure's on, and of course it's an edited show, so maybe it the editors make it seem worse than it actually is. But I don't know, I disagree about making it maybe a little less melodramatic. And I think having more seasons, very loud car there, having more seasons that serve as breaks for the melodrama, like the DC2 remake, which is more wholesome, and obviously it's a remake, so they can do a lot, but having little moments of clarity, like the Hunter-Maggie relationship, is something that you would not see in All Stars or DC4, and I love that. I love how Hunter and Maggie, have like what seems to be a very wholesome friendship in just a single episode, right? Just moments of like, these people are kind, but not overly kind where it's cringeworthy in DC4. I think the DC4 where it's a lot of stuff like, oh, you're the best person I've ever met, it's like, okay. It's like, oh, okay, this is overdoing it. It doesn't feel like a natural segue. But I think I would not go for less melodrama, but I would say add more wholesome moments of human positivity. Like, try to balance it out. I think it is a fair criticism that the first 3 seasons, especially All Stars and even parts of DC1, are overly negative about human negativity and human flaws, whereas DC4 is a little too perfect about human positivity and like, the greatness of humanity. But yeah, I don't know. Stop making romance the main thing of the show. I don't like. Okay, again, it's. I don't know how I feel, but like, yes, I do think that you can do more than just romance in the show. you can just have people be friends, or people be enemies, or people just be platonic. I think that's a totally valid thing to do. But at the same time, like I said, if you're going on these shows, if you're auditioning for these shows, and you actually make it in, right? Like, who knows? There's probably like tens of thousands of people who audition for these shows, and only 18 get to go on per season. You're probably there because the casting directors know that you're psychologically like more prone to drama or more TV moments. So like, I mean, it's a valid criticism that there's a lot of romance in the show, maybe a little too much, but again, that is just a staple of, maybe not the genre, but like of the type of characters you'd expect, right? And I don't know. I mean, and also on the other hand, this fandom is extremely horny. Like I just have to say it outright. People will ship people out of nothing. Like the total drama fandom has always kind of been this super shipper heavy fandom, and that has extended to Disventure Camp. It's like people don't like it, but at the same time, that's just the culture, and it's like that's what like people like. I don't know what to say. Not everyone, of course, but I don't know. Like Hunter and Jake got shipped immediately after like a small interaction. So I think people don't. I think it's less like stop doing romance and more like make the romance more natural, or more cute, or more subtle. You know what I mean? Because I don't know, Hunter and Jake barely interact, and like boom, Hunt Take was like a massive ship. It's like, I don't know. That's just kind of what the fandom is. And lastly, your last take was people of color have usually been handled horribly in the show. I wouldn't say horribly, but I will say that there is a lot of room for improvement. I think that you can have a a ship where it's two people of color, right? Rather than always requiring a white person. I would like there to be a ship where the person of color gets more depth than the Caucasian person. Maybe not a whole, maybe not like 50-60% more, but just like 10% more. Make it like a 60-40 split or a 70-30 split, right? Marissa and Diego, I do think that Marissa is, and I would need to rewatch because like a lot of the parts of the season I don't remember are the middle episodes, and that's specifically where Marissa is more prevalent in. I don't think Diego is handled poorly, but I do think that it is kind of an insult that Diego gets eliminated super early, and Spencer gets into a relationship, or well, a dynamic with Logan, who is they're two white boys. It's like that's a little strange, but yeah, no, I agree that the people of color, there needs to be more proofreading, better writing styles, because like it does come across as a little odd at times. I don't think ONC is racist or anything like that, but I do think that there needs to be more awareness of how things are written, just more sensitivity, more care, and more just looking for the perspective. And it is interesting because Jared and Robert are both people of color as well. They're both Hispanic men, and gay Hispanic men, if anything. But I do think that there should be a bit more sensitivity towards how the characters are written. But yes, thank you all so much for watching this second part. It's a bit longer. If you want to be in the next part, I'll do part 3 because there's still a few more hot takes to write. Leave it in the community post that I made, or comment in this video, and I will be sure to include you in part 3. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye, and remember to respect your friends' boundaries and treat them with kindness. Goodbye.